Developments. China has hit back hard against US President Donald Trump's bullying tariffs, raising fears that the escalating trade war could trigger a global recession and prompting fresh turmoil in financial markets. Beijing retaliated with punitive 34% additional tariffs on the all goods imported from the US, mirroring the US decision and exacerbating a sell-off on global stock markets. Almost $5 trillion has been wiped off the value of global stock markets since Trump's Rose Garden address on Wednesday. In the UK, the FTSE 100 index of leading shares closed more than 7% lower, its worst weeks trading since late February 2020. The dramatic escalation in trade hostilities between the world's two largest economies magnified concerns among the investors about the risk to global growth. China's retaliation came after Trump imposed 34% tariffs on Chinese goods, which were already subject to a 20% levy. Taking the total levy to 54%, he also imposed hefty tariffs on neighboring countries in southern East Asia, including Vietnam, Cambodia and Thailand, through which billions of dollars of Chinese exports are processed on their way to the US. Trump responded on his social media platform Truth Social. He said China played it wrong, they panicked. The one thing that they cannot afford to do. On Wall Street, the Nasdaq index entered the bear market territory, meaning it has lost more than 20% of its value since the sell-off began. It was down 5.8% on Friday alone. The S&P 500 fell 9.1%, its worst 5-day trading stretch since the year March 2020. All right, viewers, now let me also get my colleague Mehndi Garg live with me on the broadcast. Mehndi, at this point of time, how exactly the Trump tariffing the world has turned out? China has hit back violently, markets are in dread. There is a possible fear of global recession. What are you tracking as far as Indian markets are concerned?
Well, indeed, Simran, the U.S. stock markets have tanked more than 5% after Donald Trump's reciprocal tariffs sparked fear among, investors of a global economic recession and also.
All right, Dr. Sharath Kohli, senior economist, is with me live on the broadcast. Sir, appreciate you joining me this morning and always a pleasure speaking to you. At this point of time, China has hit back and in fact, Donald Trump has also reacted to that kind of a tariff reaction that we are also tracking from China, saying they cannot afford to panic. How do you react to this, given at a point when the world is looking largely at a possible fear of global recession?
Good morning, Simran. Good morning to the viewers of NewsX. Yes, I think China's reaction had to be retaliated by President Trump. I call him Donald Tariff Trump now, the new name that I thought would be appropriate from him. I think his comment regarding China that China cannot afford to do that, I really do not agree. It as much applies to the US. If you go into the US market, you see the consumers using Chinese goods, whether it is electronics, textiles, chemicals, toys, just about everything that is being used in America has got a Chinese origin somewhere or the other, directly or indirectly. So I'm not sure how President Trump is saying that China cannot afford it. It works both ways, if you ask me. Just the way China cannot do with America, America also cannot do without China. So I think it works both ways. A one-sided comment is not fair. Overall, yes, it is causing a large amount of panic in the global market. The stock markets are reeling. The stock markets in America, they were down and out. And, Simran, there is another category of nations. I like to name two nations here, Israel and Vietnam. Vietnam yesterday said, okay, fine, we are willing to put zero tariffs on goods coming from America. And Israel said on the very first day, we are fine with putting zero tariffs. So clause 4C in the executive order signed by President Trump on the reciprocal tariffs categorically states that if any country decides to modify or suit America, then America is most willing to sit back again and change the rates. So you will see a lot of changes happening in the times to come, especially with regard to Vietnam. The advantage which was coming to India because of Vietnam being put in the higher tariff category of 46%, I think if Vietnam goes to zero, then obviously US would also like to go to zero. Then that advantage would be lost. So if the nations, the emerging nations or the third world countries, if they agree to the US demand or they come under pressure from the US and bring down their own tariffs to zero or near zero, I think the advantage to India would be lost. So that is a developing at a very dynamic situation. We should keep a very close watch on how nations are reacting, not just verbally, but also in terms of policy. As of now, it's an out and out trade war around the world. And I think the US-China trade war is the most scary as far as the world is concerned. I have a fear that US will sink into a recession first, and then the cascading effect will be felt around the world where a lot of other countries may sink into recession. It's a weekend. Thank God that we have a Saturday, Sunday, the way US markets were reacting yesterday, more than $3 trillion knocked off. It's almost the size of a large GDP of a country knocked off from the US markets. We'll have to wait for Monday. I think we take one day at a time, Simran, because the situation is so dynamic that nation after nation are reacting. Either they are agreeing to the US or they are retaliating by way of tariffs. So one day at a time, and I'm very, very carefully waiting for Monday to see as to how the Indian markets react, one, and two, how the rest of the world, economies react to the Donald Trump tariffs. Simran.
Thank you very much for adding these details and throwing light on what exactly lies ahead for the investors and also, in fact, the traders who are looking at the fears of a probable global recession in the view of this tariff war. Now, US President Donald Trump has also spoken with Lam